Alrighty, this is a spicy thing to talk about. So, The Verge put out this tweet the other day, I think 2 days ago, as of, March 27th, it's now the 29th. So, they put out this tweet the other day saying that Final Fantasy XIV's worst expansion is now free for a limited time. Which is true. You can download Stormblood for free right now. I don't know how long it's going to last, but you can. The point of this is they're claiming that Stormblood is the game's worst expansion. That is a take. Some people would agree, other people would not. It is an opinion that I actually used to believe. I used to think it was the worst, but no longer. I do not believe it is as bad as everyone says it is. If you actually go down and read the comments on this tweet, a lot of people are actually against this idea. If you compare it to the other expansions, it does feel weak because this expansion does have some flaws in it. Number one, I'll go right out here and say it. This character right here, Lise, I fucking hate her. She's annoying. I don't like her at all. She got on my nerves the entire time. Also, the pacing. The pacing of Stormblood, very awkward. Having to jump back and forth between Doma and Alamigo constantly, and just going back and forth between the two storylines was a little jarring, a little bit uncomfortable to do, a little weird, but it's manageable. I think having the double storyline worked a lot better in getting into Shadowbringers and Endwalker, because at the beginning of Shadowbringers, you get a choice to go on two quests. Either go meet up with Alpha Node or go meet up with Alice first. And then in Endwalker, the same thing happens, where you're given a choice of two different quests at the beginning of the expansion to either go down into Labyrinthos underneath Old Charlian, or you can go to Thavnir. And whichever quest line you choose to go down first does not affect the story at all. It's just the order that you do it in. I think if Stormblood did that, of letting you choose which quest line to go down and pace it yourself, it would have been better. But yeah, so the pacing of the expansion, not very good. The story of Stormblood is actually pretty freaking real. In order to avoid spoilers, which, I mean, when did this come out? Like 2017, I guess? Yeah, Shadowbringers was 2019, so this is 2017, so it's essentially like a 5-year-old expansion, 6-year-old expansion at this point, so if you even care about spoilers anymore. Essentially, the story revolves around you traveling to Doma and, well, not specifically Doma. Doma's the capital, the continent of Othard. You travel to Othard and to Alamigo in order to liberate those nations from the hold of the Garlean Empire. And the main antagonist is a dude named Xenos. Xenos, possibly you might know who that is already, just due to because he is marketed very strongly in the Endwalker expansion, because, yeah, he's in that. Because in true JRPG fashion and anime fashion, characters cannot just simply stay dead. When they die, they have to come back, so yeah. But the story basically has you traveling to the two nations of Othard and Alamigo to get rid of the Garlean Empire and make them free, basically free those countries, or free those states. And the story goes, gosh, it's been actually a really long time since I've played it. The most memorable part of the story for me is the end, because Stormblood actually has some of the best post MSQ content, which is odd considering the main point here is the base expansion. The base expansion is decent. The leveling is okay. Probably the worst part is the beginning of it, where, well, this is the same for all the expansions, I guess, but it's when you don't have flying unlocked and you actually have to walk everywhere. Yeah, that's a fun. Who remembers walking in Final Fantasy XIV? You just fly everywhere now. But yeah, so shit, I just lost my train of thought. I'll edit this out. But anyways, so the story gets a little weird. I'd say that it is on the weaker side. The story is okay. It's passable. But I think the best part of the story is at the end, when you have basically like the game kind of pulls off. Essentially, the story is, if I could relate the story of Stormblood to another game, it would be similar to something like Mass Effect 2, where the game centers around you traveling around, building reinforcements, building an army, forming friendships and camaraderie with the other people living in this land, hoping that they will rise up and fight with you to take back their home. Similarly to how in Mass Effect 2, you have to travel around to the different planets and systems, recruiting new members to be on your crew to take down the collector ship at the end of the game. Well, the finale of Stormblood, the base expansion, not post-content, the finale of the base expansion has a really, really cool assault on Alamigo, where all of the companions and people and forces that you've met along the way come back for this big final battle, this big assault on Alamigo. And it's a really, really cool scene, seeing all of your friends and companions in the same place at the same time, and you basically leading the charge until you finally get to the final battle against Xenos atop of the Alamigan Palace, in which he transforms into the dragon Shinryu, and you have this super epic final boss battle with the dragon himself. But then, where it gets really good is 2 more points. Number 1, a patch titled Under the Moonlight. Again, spoilers for if you haven't played this, you probably should want to skip ahead. But there is a battle against Tsukuyomi, who is revealed to be Yotsuyu, Lady Yotsuyu, this evil lady. Excellent character. I love her design. She's such a good character. Tragic backstory. You end up fighting her in the form of Tsukuyomi. The boss battle against her, the trial, is unbelievably good. Pretty somewhat difficult mechanics for your first time doing it, but once you get used to the way that the moon phases work and you have to travel back and forth to pass your buffs, it's easier the more couple times you do it. It can be a little confusing on the first time though, but really excellent fight and really, really great conclusion to her story arc. And so that patch was called Under the Moonlight. I don't remember what number it is, but that's the name of it. And yeah, really, really good conclusion to Yotsuyu's story arc. And I think that final patch in which you fight Tsukuyomi is kind of the end of the Stormblood storyline. Anything after that is kind of now pre-Shadowbringers. And this is when shit starts to get real. The pre-Shadowbringers content, so like the 1 or 2 patches before patch 5.0, are so freaking good. It's like full speed ahead. The plot starts to thicken. You're starting to form these questions in your head. Uh, if you know, you know. Throw wide the gates. I mean, it's top tier storytelling. The war summit that you eventually end up having with the Emperor himself, that entire cutscene of the war summit, in which you actually get to meet and speak and talk with Emperor Varus one-on-one finally for the first time, really shows you a lot about his character and what his motivations are, and essentially what the purpose of the Garlean Empire is serving, which is, in a way, you could kind of predict this story outcome from a long way. You could kind of predict this was going to happen anyways, but even though it was a bit predictable, it still is a big moment to see that they're finally actually saying it out loud, what we thought the entire time. And then there is finally the introduction of my favorite character in the entire game, probably my favorite Final Fantasy character, period, Emmett Selk, of which I don't believe we actually learn Emmett Selk's name before Shadowbringers. Emmett Selk is revealed as a character before Shadowbringers. He appears in some cutscenes, but very briefly, and I don't think they ever actually tell you this character's name. You don't learn his name until Shadowbringers. But he is introduced. He is such a cool, charismatic guy. It's difficult to not love him. And then once you get past that and you start moving into Shadowbringers, it's perfect. So that's just story content. Raiding, on the other hand, Stormblood actually has some of the best raid content in the game, in my opinion. It has some of the most difficult stuff, because when I would, in comparison to the other Alliance raids, the Ivalice raids of Stormblood I actually think are the most difficult. In comparison to A Realm Reborn and Heavensward, there is no comparison. The A Realm Reborn raids, the Crystal Tower series, stupid easy. You can do it with your fucking eyes closed. Heavensward, the Void Ark raids, again, they're pretty easy. The final battle against Diabolos at the end, a bit tricky. As well as the fight with Skahat right beforehand, is a little bit of a mess if you're not exactly sure what to do. But again, it's not on the level of Stormblood. When you get to Stormblood, however, the raids of Stormblood are actually pretty freaking difficult, I would say. The Alliance raids, the Ivalice raids, there's a reason why a lot of people don't like to do them. It's because they're actually hard. Even comparing them to the Nier raids of Shadowbringers, and then the Myths of the 12 from Endwalker, I would still say that the Stormblood raids are harder than those. Because it's very technical. You have to actually do math, which is something that me and a lot of other people are probably not very good at. But yeah, you have to do math. There's a lot of split-second decision making, and it's very technical. These raids are very, very technical. The best part of it all, though, is the Thunder God. The Thunder God boss, I can't remember which raid he's in. He's the second to last boss in one of that. It's probably the third raid. He's the boss right before you fight, not Ultimacia. Ultimacia is from Final Fantasy VIII. Ultima the High Seraph. This one's called Ultima the High Seraph, the final boss of Ivalice, which is based on tactics. Really good final boss. The Thunder God, amazing fight. Really, really cool fight. But then when you get into the what are those called? What are these called? The, I guess, normal raids. I guess. Yeah, they're just called normal raids. I don't really have a name. They're just normal. The normal raid series, that is actually my favorite raid series in the whole game. The Omega raid series is so well done because we get the character of Alpha, the Chocobo, who is freaking adorable. We have Sid and Nero constantly fighting and bickering with one another, which is hilarious. Sid and Nero have such great on-screen chemistry together. They're so fun to watch in person. They're so fun to watch together on screen. The fights are mostly fan service. You got battles with X-Death, 2 battles with X-Death. You have his normal form and then his super big form, Neo X-Death, what he's called. So you have the fight with X-Death and then Neo X-Death. You have normal Kefka and then Mad God Kefka, where he's fucking a big-ass clown demon angel thing. Obviously you have the train, which unfortunately, no, you cannot suplex the train, but it's still there. You get a fight with Midgar Swarmer. You get a fight with Chaos. There's so many fights within the Omega series that are just pure fan service. And then, of course, you fight Omega himself as not only the big robot, spider, beetle thing, whatever Omega is supposed to be. And then you also have the fight with Omega as a human being, the male and female Omegas. And all of which really, really fun fights. So the raid content in Stormblood, amazing. I still am not entirely, well, I guess I kind of am. I think if you're trying to compare Stormblood to other expansions, it does fall short due to the pacing issues and the story is a little bit lacking. The villain is not the strongest. Probably the weakest point of Stormblood is the lack of a compelling villain, because even though Xenos is a very intimidating, scary person, he doesn't really have a whole lot of depth or complexity to his character. He's just, I want to kill you because I'm bored and I like fighting things. That's basically all Xenos' character is at that point. In Endwalker, when we get to know Xenos a bit more, you warm up to him. He's not that bad of a person any longer. Or, well, he's still a bad person. It's just, he becomes more likable. I think Xenos is a character that he takes a bit to actually like him for me, and I don't think Xenos got enough screen time within Stormblood, or he didn't get enough impact on the story to make him actually, or he did not have enough impact on the story to make me actually care about him. Not until Endwalker did I actually start to see Xenos as a proper character. So the lack of a strong villain is probably the weakest part of Stormblood in my opinion. And when you're judging that to the rest of the game, Final Fantasy XIV does have a very, very strong story. Most people probably would play the game just for the story alone. And so when you say that this entire game has such an amazing storyline, and then Stormblood, the story is just kind of meh, I can understand why people would make the assumption that Stormblood is the worst when it comes to that perspective. Do I think it's the worst? No. I would actually say that A Realm Reborn is the worst part of the game, because it's the part I remember the least. But yeah, I would not say that Stormblood is the worst expansion. This is a pretty hot take. This point right here, this is what I believe right here. This is the opinion that I have always had of Stormblood. Stormblood is not a bad expansion. It is just stuck between two really, really good expansions. First, you had Heavensward, and then you had Shadowbringers. Heavensward and Shadowbringers are both very, very good. Stormblood in the middle, a bit on the meh side, and so by just immediate comparison, it views it as the worst because it's sandwiched in between two really, really good ones. It doesn't mean that it's a bad expansion, it's just not as good. But is it the worst? No. I'd personally probably say A Realm Reborn is the worst part of the game to play through because it is very long. It used to be much longer, but thankfully in recent patches and recent years, the devs have really trimmed down the content it takes to get through A Realm Reborn because previously the post A Realm Reborn content getting into Heavensward was like a fucking slog. It took so long to get through that. But they've cut down on the amount of side quests that you had to do to get to there, so it's not as bad anymore. But yeah. That picture of Alice. But yeah, is Yoshi P. Is Stormblood the game's worst expansion? I don't think so. Do people have that opinion? Yes. Are they allowed to have that opinion? Yes. But is it the worst? No. What is the worst part of the game? I don't think the game has a quote-unquote worst part. I say the least fun to play through is probably A Realm Reborn for me personally. But for them to come out and make this post saying that the game's worst expansion, that's a hot take. You could probably get away with saying this a couple years ago, but now, with how much the game has changed and how people like retroactively look back and think maybe, it wasn't as bad. It's not as bad as we thought it was. I think that this is much more of a hot take now than it was back then, because this probably was public opinion back when Stormblood did come out. But nowadays, in current time, probably not really anymore. Also, I completely forgot about jobs. Stormblood introduced Red Mage, which I love Red Mage, as well as Samurai, and I think Blue Mage? Did Blue Mage come out in Stormblood? I think it might have. Or I'm probably wrong. I might be wrong. I'm not sure. But yeah, Stormblood also gave Red Mage and Samurai two really cool jobs. I love Red Mage. I like Samurai, but I like Red Mage more. But yeah, this was my take on this seemingly viral post for the past few days. Is Endwalker the game's worst expansion? Or Endwalker. Is Stormblood the game's worst expansion? No. This is a hot take, and yeah, it's not. There's a lot of people that will also defend this as being not the worst. So yeah.